Thanks for joining us.
Talkline Network Radio, America's longest-running Jewish broadcast network, the voice of the Jewish community.
Welcome to the podcast. You are now tuned in to this episode of our podcast. Today, we are going to interview some of the greatest and most influential minds in our field. And now, please welcome your host.
You're listening to Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast on the air since 1981.
And we're back. You know, Alvin Bragg has been in office. People are very upset. He's a district attorney of Manhattan. They feel that he's coddling criminals and not really paying attention to stopping crimes in New York. And very few people are stepping out to really challenge him. But our guest would like to unseat Alvin Bragg. Maron joined us 20 years in the Legal Aid Society. She taught and supervised third-year law students at Cardozo's Criminal Defense Law Clinic. She's been involved in school boards, and she ran twice for office as a Democrat for city council and for Congress. Now she's running as a Republican to unseat District Attorney of Manhattan, Alvin Bragg. Maud, welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Zev.
And might add, you're also connected to the community. You're a convert to Judaism, and you have roots here in the city. What made you decide to run against Alvin Bragg? And you're running as a Republican. So you started off as a Democrat twice before. Now you converted to Republican. We'll talk about that. But what made you decide to run against Alvin Bragg? Because nobody else is running.
Right. Well, you know, I'm not opposed to uphill battles and to taking on causes because it's the right thing to do. And in New York City, the right thing to do is to stop the slide into the bad old days that many of us can remember when our city was really, really unsafe. And we're heading in that direction. And as someone who's worked in the criminal courts for over 2 decades, I know that what Alvin Bragg is doing and what he said he would do in terms of really institutionalizing a radical sort of far left idea about criminal justice is bad for our city and it's bad for all of us.
No question. But you took up the challenge. We're a city of millions upon millions of people. You're the only one that's challenging him, at least on the Republican side, right? Right.
Look, I have fought uphill battles before. When Bill de Blasio was our mayor, he appointed this Chancellor Carranza, who wanted to get rid of the specialized high schools, get rid of Stuyvesant and Bronx Science and Brooklyn Tech. To do so, they would get rid of the specialized high school entrance exam, under the idea that meritocracy was somehow racist, that making kids work hard to do well on tests was, bad for public school students. Of course, they were wrong. It was a terrible idea. They had millions of dollars at their disposal, and they tried to ram through these changes in Albany. I got together with a small group of parents, and we battled and fought that bad idea, and we won. In the David and Goliath battles, sometimes the David can win.
No, certainly. Listen, I think he is defeatable, but it could take a lot of time, money, and effort to do so. Now, you started off as a Democrat and a little bit more liberal, and now you're running as a Republican. What happened to you? Why did you decide to run as a Republican in New York? Wouldn't it be easier to run as a Democrat? To beat another Democrat?
Yeah, well, let me say two. I'll give you 2 answers to that. One is something that I've said before, and I'll say again. And I'm quoting Ronald Reagan to say this, is that I didn't leave the Democratic Party left me. My values have not particularly changed. I'm a sort of moderate centrist person. I'm a mom in the city raising 4 kids, all of whom go to New York City public schools, 1 graduate, but 3 that are still in our schools. And I'm socially liberal on a lot of things, but I think and thought when I was running as a Democrat that some of the ideas my party has pushed forth in the last few years have been extreme and bad for us. I was opposed to defund the police back in 21 when I was running as a Democrat for city council. And I'm opposed to it now. It's a terrible idea. It doesn't matter how you dress it up. It's still a bad idea. So, we've had folks like Michael Bloomberg, who was a lifelong Democrat, who ran as a Republican to offer up his ideas in a general election.
Well, Donald Trump was a Democrat, now he's Republican too, right?
Good ideas are good ideas no matter what party they come to the voter in. And I think there's a lot of voters, Democrats, Republicans, Working Family Party, conservative, unaffiliated, people who used to be in the Independence Party, all sorts of people who want the good ideas to beat the bad ideas. And you'll have more than one way to vote for me on the ballot in November. But it's the ideas that need to be out there, and you have to work through the party system that exists.
Now, here's the question. Manhattan is extremely liberal.
Mm-hmm.
If you, they may love you and they say, I want to vote for you, but if you are a Republican, they would not vote for you.
Right.
Okay. So you decide to run as a Republican. Doesn't that make it even more challenging for you, considering the nature of Manhattanites, where a lot of, especially on the West Side, where if they see Republican, they run the opposite direction?
Well, I'm going to give voters an opportunity to pull a different lever if they're picky about how you vote for the best person in the race. There's things called the independent nominating petition. You can create another party line to run on. So we'll give people options. I promise you, you will have an option to vote for the best ideas when you get into the voting booth. But I just want to say that I really do think there are those people, right? There are those people who are like, I'll never pull the lever for this party or that party. Okay, fine. But I think of this more like, we have the people who, voted for Bragg's challenger last time. And then you have the people who are Republicans or independents or unaffiliated who sometimes just don't come out to vote on non-presidential years because often the Republican Party doesn't offer up a candidate, or they
the Republican Party is not that strong in New York.
That's true. Well, there's Republicans in various parts of New York, but I'm running as a common sense centrist. And I know that there are people who will come out to vote just because I'm giving them an opportunity to vote. And then you have all these people who are registered as Democrats, but who have been as fed up as I have been with the bad policies and the bad ideas that are coming. Those folks need an option too. And so we have a lot of different people who, if they know that the district attorney race this year in 2025 is live and there's a good option and a bad option, our job is to get them out to the polls. We have to raise money to do that. We have to get our message out. And that's what we're doing right now.
So you raise an interesting point. Money is a very important factor. In fact, when you're running for office, most of the time is not pressing the flesh. It's really raising the money. Right. And even incumbents, I remember Jerry Nadler making calls, spending time raising money. So, and he's been there for a long time. So the question I have for you is, how much money do you have to raise? How much have you raised? And how's that going? Because that's an important ingredient if you want to unseat Alvin Bragg.
Right. So I wish it weren't true, but in races like this, people, to really be competitive, you need to raise millions of dollars. And the good news there is that so many people, not just in our city, but all over the country, know how bad Alvin Bragg is, because, this is a local race. So it's just Manhattanites who can vote. But New York City is a national city, right? We are an international city. We have people coming from all over to come to New York City. So I have received already donations from all 50 states. There are people all over this country who want to see Alvin Bragg defeated. Maybe that's because you have a family member who lives in New York, or because you have, a student in college here in New York, or because you've come here on vacation. But people have a connection to New York, from all over the place. And we're going to keep raising money.
No, but how's that coming along? Because it's a daunting task, and you have to be a specialist in fundraising. It's not easy to raise money.
Right. So it is coming along well, but we got to keep going. What we need to do at this point is let people know this race is a little bit different than other races. People have gotten used to what's called matching funds in New York. This is not a matching funds race. So what it has is a very high cap. Individuals can donate up to $50,000 in this race. And so if we get our message out to the people who can support this race, we're going to be able to raise the kind of money we need to have the grassroots work that we need, and to get on TV, to be on radio, to have both the earned media and the paid media that we need. I'm very confident that we're going to be able to do it, because I've talked to so many people who are really hungry for alternatives and who know how bad Alvin Bragg is.
It would seem to me that you could be a cause around the country. Alvin Bragg is infamous, not just in New York, but around the country. Is the Republican Party helping you? It would seem to me that this should be a priority of the National Republican Party to try to make a difference in New York. If you win this race, it will be a big victory for the Republicans.
Absolutely. And I've had great support so far from the local, state, and National Republican Party in terms of just being excited about this race and what we want to do. And I will say that it's not, we have a good, I think, example in what just happened in Los Angeles. There was this guy, carbon copy of Alvin Bragg in terms of policy, George Gascon, a Soros-funded, Soros policy enacting district attorney named George Gascon, who was defeated by a centrist, a moderate person who, they have a different structure. They don't have the primary system the way we do in New York, so their race looked different, but it was good ideas defeating bad ideas, and that's exactly what we want to do here in New York.
Our guest would like to unseat Alvin Bragg as the district attorney of Manhattan. She started off as being a Democrat, ran twice for once for city council, for Congress as a Democrat. She's now a convert to being a Republican. She's also a convert to Judaism. She is 20 years at Legal Aid Society. She taught and supervised third-year law students at Cardozo's Criminal Defense Law Clinic, been involved in education as well. We live in a time where a lot of people are apathetic when it comes to the political system, and so few people make a difference. Even the last time Alvin Bragg ran for district attorney, I think it was Thomas Knipp who ran against him. We interviewed him, but very few people determined the race. And this being an off-presidential year, is how do you get people excited and motivated? Because I would suspect that very few numbers are going to make a difference in this coming election.
Absolutely.
Unless the mayoral race, but I think people expect Andy Cuomo to take it away. So in which case, it may not draw a lot of people to come out.
Right. It's true that in the off-presidential years, not a lot of people vote, but this is a Manhattan-specific race. So I have a very small universe of voters that I have to reach. We know who those voters are, who usually don't show up in non-presidential years, and who can blame them? There's often nobody on the ballot for them to vote for. Our job in this campaign is to make sure that every single person who can vote in this race knows that they have an option, know there's a path to defeat Alvin Bragg, because I know how many New Yorkers want to defeat Alvin Bragg. And really, it's just our job to make sure that folks know that this election offers the real alternative. Often people think, they say, oh, if you win the Democratic primary, you've won the general. And often that's true, but it's not true when you actually have a competition in the general election. If folks come out in November to vote, we can defeat Alvin Bragg.
Now, what's interesting about 27% of the Upper East Side is Jewish, about 30% of the Upper West Side is Jewish. There's a tremendous amount of Jewish voters, and Jews do get involved. How are you targeting Jewish voters in this election?
Look, I think
it's November, by the way. I'll tell her it's November, so
absolutely.
It's coming up, but not that soon.
Right. Well, first of all, if anyone wants to invite me to their community, to their synagogue, to their organization, neighborhood organization, parent organization, senior organization, any group whatsoever, I'm happy to come and speak and talk to people about this election and talk about what we can do. I think the Jewish vote is incredibly important in this election. And I also think, as I was saying to you earlier, I'm a woman who defined myself as a lefty and a progressive, and that's true of so much of the Jewish community. But over the last, year and a half, there's been a big sea change. Post October 7th, I think many Jews and other people in our broader community who thought of themselves as sort of fighting the good fight against injustice have realized, like, oh, hey, I've been a good ally to people for so long and it's not being reciprocated. And so there's been a sea change. It's sad, but it's true. And if you're a political realist and you pay attention to, what's happening, we have, a really staggering rise of anti-Semitism in our city that some people have spoken up about and fought against, but some people have been very, very silent about. And I think that having those conversations that I've been having with folks is really, really important, because people are looking for an alternative to somebody who is going to do as Alvin Bragg is doing and looking the other way when he sees the sort of anti-Semitism that was in, I graduated from Barnard in 1993, and I see the sort of Hamas propaganda, Hamas loving terrorist sympathizers on the Barnard campus right now, and it's infuriating. And in Alvin Bragg, we have someone who thought, I'm not gonna prosecute most of these folks when the Columbia campus was up in arms with Hamas-loving encampments last year. And I think I don't think you have to be Jewish to be infuriated by that, but I think certainly the Jewish community, if we're paying attention to Alvin Bragg, we know that he is not someone to be trusted on a whole host of issues, and one of which is accurately prosecuting folks who who break the law. As a First Amendment lover, I will say this. You can say the Holocaust didn't exist. You can say October 7th was justified resistance. You can say all of these stupid, false things, and you have the right to say that in this country. But what you cannot do is break the law, to harass people, to do property vandalism, to break into buildings on private college campuses and occupy them, preventing other students from going to school. Those are chargeable offenses, and they should be charged, and we should have a district attorney who would do that.
You mentioned October 7th, and you spoke a little bit about it. Perhaps you can elaborate and how that changed your perception, where it helped you go from Democrat, more liberal, to a little bit more conservative Republican. Also, did it affect you Jewishly as well? Because I know you were a little kid when you converted, correct?
Yes, I was, my mother remarried and she converted to Judaism, and then I converted, you know, a few years after that, because I was very young when she remarried, and grew up going to a synagogue in Pennsylvania where I grew up before I came back here to go to college. After October 7th, there were two things that happened to me that were sort of part of the political conversation around what was happening to the Jewish community in New York. The first was I passed a resolution in my education council, which is a school board in New York, which took a lot of work to get passed. I couldn't even get it on the agenda first, to condemn those Hamas attacks and to offer support to Jewish students who were facing this upsurge of anti-Semitism in some of our schools. I also worked with, there was a House committee that did a hearing on the K through 12 anti-Semitism, and I helped prepare a briefing document on that, outlining all of the different ways in which we faced extreme anti-Semitism in our schools. We had a Jewish teacher in a Queens high school who was barricaded in a room because students were rampaging through the hallways, and we had a really inadequate response from our school's chancellor in how he responded to that. And I don't think if a black teacher had been locked in a classroom because there was white supremacists, you know,
KKK, Nazis, or wherever outside
the streets, right? It's how you can't even imagine it. Like it's just, we wouldn't tolerate that for a second. And the fact that a Jewish teacher was locked in a classroom for so long should equally not be tolerated. So I did that kind of work. Then I also had a situation. My daughter is a junior at Stuyvesant High School, and the school paper published a really horrible op-ed. Again, let me make the caveat that people have the right to publish terrible ideas, but parents like me have the right to say what I think about them. And I said it was Hamas propaganda and it was shameful. The chancellor kicked me off my school board. He said I was harassing a student. I was doing no such thing. I was exercising my First Amendment.
And where were you actually writing, in the paper or having a speech?
The New York Post called me and asked for a comment, and I said what I thought about shameful anti-Semitism.
So Chancellor, because you gave an interview to the New York Post, is that why you were fired from the school board by the chancellor?
Yes, they kicked me.
Chancellor Banks, right?
To Chancellor Banks, who's now no longer the chancellor.
Thank God for that.
Yes, I know, it was terrible. He removed me from my school board seat. But really important, Zev, I have to tell you this. I was in court at the time, in federal court, challenging a speech code that was aimed at parent volunteers like me if you're elected to the school board. And the federal court judge, who was an Obama-nominated judge in Brooklyn, fellow Barnard grad too, by the way, she reseated me. We won a fairly big First Amendment victory. We won the preliminary injunction asking to reseat me to that, because you can't kick people off of an elected school board position for saying what they think. I said what I think. The chancellor kicked me off, and the federal judge restored me. And it was, you know, as a former litigator, I've won many cases in court, but it was a particularly sweet victory to win on First Amendment grounds, because it's so important to this country that both the terrible ideas and the good ideas that challenge those bad ideas need to be heard.
No, absolutely. Wow, they kicked you off just for your, but he wouldn't punish, and that's what my beef with Chancellor Banks was. He wouldn't punish the students who did these anti-Semitic things, leaving classroom to go to a demonstration and to really harass teachers and lock them up in the room. Right. He didn't go after them, but he went after those that attacked that position. Unbelievable. Yes. Unbelievable. Here's the toughest question of the interview. Now, you've been around for a while. You've been run for office. Right. Now, you have to go to different ethnic groups and, of course, a lot of Jewish groups. What is your favorite Jewish food that you go to on the trail?
That's so funny. When I ran for Congress, they asked us all, and I was running in what had been Jerry Nadler's seat because he had been my congressman forever, and they asked everybody where they got their bagels. And because I live in downtown New York, it's Russ and Daughters. My bagel order, is definitely a sesame bagel with scallion cream cheese and lox, and that was the question there. And I'll probably stick with that as a food choice just because it's what I eat the most often. But it cracked me up because when I ran that race, everyone had a kind of decent answer of where they got their bagels. Some was Zabar, some was Russ and Daughters in it. But Mondaire Jones had moved down from Westchester to run in that race, and he had absolutely no idea about where one could get a decent bagel. So he just named his deli on the corner. Yeah.
Mondaire Jones, another great individual, quote unquote. What is your Hebrew name, by the way?
Malka.
Malka, very nice name. So, as this is an election, you're going to be going to different synagogues. If people want to learn more information about your campaign, invite you to speak to the Jewish organization or any organization. How can they do so?
maudformanhattan.com. You can write to us at info@maudformanhattan.com. And you can also go to maudmaron.com. It all goes to the same place and you can get the same information. But maudformanhattan.com has all the information about how to reach us, and we would love to hear from people.
Absolutely. No, it's grassroots, and it's certainly a challenging and daunting task that you're taking upon yourself. So a lot of luck with it. And it's just a question of motivating people to get more involved and to run. And like I said, it could be a national cause. The question, though, is how do you get the national? Now, I know the Republican Party in New York, but how do you get the National Republican Party to back it up? That could raise millions of dollars for you if they decide to do so.
You know what, Zev, let me say one more quick thing. Right now, we are petitioning. And for New Yorkers who know, that's how you get on the ballot. So I will be at the Midtown Republican Club tonight, and I will be at the Young Republican Club tomorrow night. And so people who are registered Republicans need to sign the petitions to get on the ballot. We'll come to you. If you reach out to us and write us, we'll come to you and get those petition signatures. We'll also come to any event. We have lots of great young volunteers who will bring their clipboard and you can sign to help get us on the ballot, because that's the first, that's the most important step, because if you're not on the ballot, there's no race. So we're doing that.
How many signatories do you need, or signatures do you need?
You need 4,000, but no, you never stop at 4,000 because
they're going to challenge you.
Additional amount. So
let me ask a question. Usually, I know in races they challenge the signatures to try to get someone off the ballot. Now, since you're running it as a Republican or in a Republican primary, there's no other challengers, so nobody can really challenge your signatures. Can a Democrat challenge your signatures?
Yes, that's how it works.
A Democrat can challenge us in the Republican primary.
You can almost count on the fact that Alvin Bragg will challenge the person running against him. I've never actually been challenged when I've run before, despite so many people who have strenuously disagreed with me, but it happens quite frequently. And so you need to get many, many more signatures beyond what the requirement.
No, but that's my question to you is, it's a different primary. So can anybody challenge your signatures, or is it only somebody running in the race can challenge the signature? What's the law? Do you know?
But I would have to triple check, but I believe anybody can challenge it. I'm not sure that you have to have a standing requirement to make the challenge, but I'd have to double check that.
Because it costs money. You have to have lawyers to go in and challenge it. So,
right.
But that's what I was under the impression was only in the primary that one is, but you say somebody Democrat can challenge and Republican, and vice versa.
Right. You can challenge access to the general ballot.
Maud, Malka, Maron, thank you for joining us. Look forward to having you back and continue. I know it's not easy. You have an uphill battle, but we'll have you on more often. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Zev.
Thank you for tuning in to
Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast, the pulse beat of the Jewish community.
For continuous Jewish programs, TalklineNetwork.com, or our 24-hour-a-day listen line at 641-741-0389. For past shows, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, Instagram, and all major podcast platforms, or jewishpodcast.org. Thanks for listening to the TalklineNetwork.com.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.